What do you mean the keys aren't available? The residence is vacant. That's impossible, I declared, my knuckles turning pale as I clutched my cell phone tightly. The person living across the road watched me from his front steps, observing as I walked nervously back and forth before what had previously been my residence. I am Jasmine Rojas, and I had just completed a 4-hour drive from my college to Bakersfield during spring vacation, only to discover my family home displaying a real estate sign planted in the front grass. The glass panes were uncovered, lacking drapes, with no furnishings apparent from outside. 3 dark refuse sacks rested on the entrance like unwelcome visitors. Upon examining one container, I discovered my garments, my academic materials, pieces of the existence I had abandoned upon departing for higher education. Your dad mentioned you should have telephoned beforehand, my Uncle Thomas stated, his tone uncertain through the phone connection. They relocated 7 days ago. Weren't you informed? Absolutely not, I responded, the response hardly escaping beyond the obstruction in my windpipe. Nobody shared this information with me. I disconnected and dialed my father's number. Every ring seemed endless. Yes. His tone was monotone, lacking feeling. Papa, the residence is vacant. There are refuse containers with my possessions on the entrance steps. What's happening? A silence occurred. Then, we relocated. You've reached adulthood now. Handle this situation yourself. The connection terminated. I gazed at my device, shocked. I attempted calling again, directly to voice recording. I contacted my mother's device. Identical result. My younger sibling's phone. No response. In that moment, I had been eliminated from their existence. No advance notice, no farewell, not even the basic respect of a new address. I remained there observing the evening light create lengthy shadows over what had formerly been my front garden. The oak tree my father and I had established when I turned 8 continued standing proudly, its limbs extending toward a dwelling that no longer belonged to our family. I had transferred portions of my academic funding home monthly. I had sustained a 3.9 grade point average in legal preparation while maintaining part-time employment. I had been the dependable child, the silent one, the one who never created problems, and this became my compensation. I refused to weep, not at that moment. Rather, I collected those refuse containers and placed them in my vehicle. I registered at a lodging facility for the evening, arranging my recovered belongings across the rough bedding. Several textbooks, cold weather clothing I'd abandoned, a damaged photo holder containing a picture of my family at the shore 3 summers prior, everyone appearing happy, everyone being dishonest. During that evening, I reached a conclusion. If they desired to eliminate me, I would reciprocate. I would sever all connections, and I would construct something they could never remove from me. I matured believing family represented unconditional assistance. My parents had immigrated from Mexico prior to my birth, and prioritizing family was essentially our domestic faith. My father labored extended shifts at the production facility, and my mother maintained homes. They reminded us constantly of their sacrifices. We arrived here possessing nothing, so you could possess everything, my father would declare during meals. Learning is your passage. I accepted those statements seriously. While other children attended celebrations, I studied. When my secondary school friends obtained summer employment at shopping centers, I worked unpaid at the local courthouse. My acceptance to university through a legal preparation scholarship was intended to be the initial return on their investment. My younger sibling, Gabriel, differed. He struggled academically, favored video games over books, and had been apprehended shoplifting on 2 occasions. Yet my parents never threatened his removal. They defended him, supported him, pardoned him. He's discovering his path, they would state. Perhaps that explains why their desertion caught me off guard. The dependable daughter discarded while the problematic son remained under their protection. During that evening at the lodging facility, I contacted Professor Wilkins, my constitutional law teacher who had become somewhat of a guide. They simply departed, she inquired, disbelief clear in her tone. Correct. I'm uncertain about my next steps. I cannot exactly return to dormitories during vacation. And my voice faltered, the feeling finally emerging. Listen carefully, Jasmine. Come reside with me until dormitories reopen. We'll resolve this situation together. Professor Wilkins resided alone in a Victorian residence filled with books and 2 senior cats. She provided me her spare bedroom and a key. "No deadline," she stated. "Concentrate on your academics." During that spring vacation, rather than relaxing, I immersed myself in investigation. Professor Wilkins had arranged a summer legal internship for me at Riverton Law Partners, specializing in housing discrimination matters. The irony was not overlooked. "Direct it constructively," Professor Wilkins counseled during tea one evening. "The most effective advocacy originates from personal experience." I agreed, considering the family photographs I discovered crumpled at the base of one refuse container. My quinceañera, secondary school graduation, all the achievements my parents had celebrated only to discard the proof like waste. During that evening, I blocked their contact numbers. All of them: my father, mother, sibling, even aunts and uncles who might facilitate their conduct. If anyone inquired about my family, I simply stated, "We don't communicate." No elaborate narrative, no request for sympathy. I was reconstructing from nothing, and emotional attachment had no position in the foundation. The summer internship at Riverton Law Partners transformed everything. What began as fundamental research and errand running quickly developed when my supervisor, attorney Eleanor Grayson, recognized my ability for connecting with clients. "You possess something uncommon, Jasmine," she informed me after I helped comfort a young mother confronting eviction. "You genuinely listen." I was designated to help with intake conversations, meeting families being forced from affordable housing by developers, elderly renters facing unlawful rent increases, students dealing with exploitative landlords. Their narratives resonated with me in ways I couldn't express. One evening, following a particularly difficult day interviewing 3 families from the identical apartment building who all received simultaneous eviction notices, I remained late organizing case documentation. Eleanor discovered me there at 9 p.m. surrounded by documents. "Working late hours?" she asked, standing in the doorway. "These families have nowhere to relocate," I stated. "The developers are offering them 2 weeks in a motel as compensation for terminating their leases early." Eleanor sighed. "Unfortunately, that's frequently more than legal requirements mandate." "But it's incorrect," I insisted. 2 weeks isn't sufficient time to locate new housing, particularly with security deposits and first month's rent. These people will become homeless. The system is flawed," Eleanor agreed. "So, what will you do regarding it?" That question remained with me for days. What could I, a second-year pre-law student with an internship, possibly accomplish? The solution came unexpectedly during a mandatory university financial assistance seminar. The presenter mentioned that students could request social innovation grants, initial funding for projects addressing community requirements. The application deadline was merely 2 weeks away. I remained awake 3 consecutive nights drafting a proposal for a housing advocacy program specifically for students and low-income families. I named it Safe Space Initiative. Eleanor helped me refine the legal components, and Professor Wilkins reviewed the final application. While awaiting news about the grant, I received the first of many calls from my parents. It arrived 6 months after they had abandoned me, a voicemail from my father. "Jasmine, your mother worries about you. Contact us." No apology, no explanation, just an expectation that I would respond to their summons like an obedient daughter. I didn't return the call. 3 days later, another voicemail. "This silent treatment is immature, Jasmine. We're your family." I preserved the message but didn't respond. The calls increased in frequency. Sometimes my father, sometimes my mother, occasionally my brother. Their tones varied from demanding to begging. None acknowledged their actions. When the university granted me the Social Innovation Award, $25,000 to launch Safe Space Initiative, I didn't share the information with them. When I was offered a paid position at Riverton to continue my work throughout the academic year, I celebrated with Professor Wilkins and Eleanor instead. My new family was forming around me, people who supported me not from obligation but from genuine respect and care. By January, the Safe Space Initiative had assisted 23 students fighting wrongful evictions. We operated from a converted storage room at Riverton Law Partners with 2 volunteer paralegals and a rotating schedule of law students earning clinical credit. Most days I hurried from classes to the office, spending evenings reviewing cases and improving our approach. The work was exhausting but rewarding. Each family that retained housing, each student who avoided homelessness, felt like a personal triumph. I was constructing something meaningful from the ruins of my own displacement. My parents, meanwhile, had intensified their campaign to reconnect. The calls arrived with alarming frequency, sometimes multiple times daily. When I continued disregarding them, they recruited relatives. "Your mother weeps nightly," my Aunt Lucia texted. "Whatever they did, can't you forgive them?" I didn't respond to these messages either. Forgiveness required acknowledgement, and they had yet to admit any wrongdoing. One Tuesday afternoon in February, I was counseling a sophomore named Devin, who had returned from winter break to discover his landlord had rented his room to someone else despite his current lease. As we discussed his options, the office phone rang. "Safe Space Initiative. This is Jasmine," I answered, gesturing apologetically to Devin. "Jasmine, is that you?" It was my mother's voice. My stomach sank. "How did you obtain this number?" "It's on your website," she said. "Why haven't you returned our calls?" "We've been extremely worried." Devin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I covered the mouthpiece. "I apologize. I need to address this. Would you mind waiting outside for a moment?" After he left, I uncovered the phone. "This is my workplace. Please don't call here again." "We're your parents," my mother said, her voice breaking. "We have the right." "You forfeited that right," I interrupted, "when you put my belongings in garbage bags and sold our house without informing me. I'm not doing this now." "Your father made an error," she pleaded. "We had financial difficulties. The house was being foreclosed. We were embarrassed." For a moment, I felt a crack in my determination. Financial difficulties, foreclosure, they had never mentioned money problems. "If you were in trouble, you could have informed me," I said, my voice softer. "I would have helped. I was already sending money home." "Your father wouldn't permit it," she said. "His pride. You understand how he is." I did understand. My father's pride was a powerful force shaping our family dynamics since childhood. But pride didn't justify their actions. "I need to return to work," I said firmly. "Please respect my boundaries." I hung up before she could respond, hands trembling slightly as I placed the receiver down. The brief conversation had unearthed feelings I thought I'd successfully buried. Anger, certainly, but also a lingering sense of responsibility toward them. Later that evening, Eleanor found me still at my desk, staring at Safe Space's call log. "Everything acceptable?" "You seem distracted," she said, sitting on the edge of my desk. I hesitated, then told her about the call. "Part of me wants to believe they had valid reasons," I admitted. "That it wasn't just cruelty." Eleanor considered this. "People rarely act from pure cruelty, Jasmine. But reasons and excuses aren't identical. Whatever financial troubles they experienced, they chose to handle it by abandoning you without warning." She was correct. And yet, my mother's explanation had planted doubt. What if there was more to the story? What if they had been desperate? The following day, against my better judgment, I did something I'd resisted for months. I searched for my family online. What I discovered shattered any emerging sympathy. A cheerful Facebook post from my mother dated just 3 weeks after they'd moved, showing her, my father, and Gabriel smiling in front of a new house. The caption read, "New beginnings. So blessed." There had been no financial crisis. There had been no foreclosure. There had just been a decision to leave me behind. The unanswered calls accumulated like falling snow, 120, 150, 200. My parents' voicemails evolved from demanding to pleading, occasionally peppered with information about their new lives, as if we were having a normal ongoing conversation instead of a one-sided bombardment. Gabriel got accepted to community college, my mother reported in late March. He's studying computer programming. "You always said he was intelligent." "The neighbors brought us tamales," my father announced in April. "Not as good as your mother's, but they're trying to be welcoming." These casual updates infuriated me more than their earlier demands. They were living their lives, forming new community connections, celebrating milestones, all while I was still processing the trauma of their abandonment. Meanwhile, Safe Space Initiative was gaining attention. A local news station ran a feature on our work, interviewing several students we'd helped. The university newspaper followed with a profile highlighting my innovative approach to housing justice. These small spotlights increased our caseload dramatically. We need more resources, I told Eleanor one afternoon, gesturing at our overflowing intake folders. More volunteers, more space, more funding. I might have a solution, she replied. The Watkins Foundation is accepting proposals for their annual social justice grants. The award is substantial, enough to hire staff and rent proper offices. The application process was grueling. I spent weeks drafting and redrafting our proposal, gathering testimonials from clients, and compiling data on housing insecurity among students. The final document ran to 47 pages, detailing Safe Space's mission, methodology, and measurable impacts. 2 days after submission, I received a call from an unfamiliar number with my hometown's area code. Hello, I answered cautiously. Jasmine, it's Mrs. Hernandez from next door. Our former neighbor. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I found the house empty. I hope it's acceptable that I called, she continued. Your brother gave me your number. He said you might not answer if you saw their names on caller ID. My defenses rose immediately. If this is about reconnecting with my parents. No, she interrupted. Well, not directly. It's about the house. Your old house. Someone broke in last night. The police think they were looking for valuables. But of course, the place is empty. Your father asked me to check if perhaps you had come back for something. He didn't want to report a break-in if it was just you. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. I haven't been back since that day, Mrs. Hernandez. Besides, I don't have keys anymore. That's what I told him, she sighed. But there's something else. The intruder left something behind. An envelope with your name on it. The police gave it to me since I'm watching the property. My heart skipped. What does it say? I haven't opened it, she said. It's addressed to you, but it looks official. There's a law firm's name on it. Official mail at my old address. No one should be sending me legal documents there. I'd updated my address months ago. Can you open it? I asked. Just tell me what it says. I heard paper tearing, then silence. Mrs. Hernandez? It's about your grandmother's estate, she said finally. Your maternal grandmother in Mexico. My grandmother had died when I was 13. I barely remembered her. What about her estate? It says you've inherited property in Oaxaca, Mrs. Hernandez read slowly. And there's a bank statement, Jasmine. It shows a balance of over $400,000. My mind reeled. That can't be right. My grandmother lived simply. She didn't have that kind of money. The letter says the property was developed after her death. Resort condominiums. Your portion is the proceeds from the sale of 2 units. I grabbed a pen, scribbling as Mrs. Hernandez dictated the law firm's contact information. My hand shook as I processed the implications. Does it say when this inheritance became available? Mrs. Hernandez paused, papers shuffling. Yes, it was finalized last March. Last March. 1 month before my parents abandoned me. The timing couldn't be coincidental. They had known about my inheritance, and they had left me behind anyway. The Watkins Foundation called while I was still processing the inheritance bombshell. We'd been selected as finalists for their grant and needed to prepare a presentation for their board. Under normal circumstances, this would have been cause for celebration. The foundation's backing would transform Safe Space from a scrappy student initiative into a legitimate nonprofit. But I was distracted, my thoughts circling back to my grandmother's unexpected legacy. After consulting with Eleanor, I contacted the Mexican law firm handling the estate. They confirmed everything. The inheritance was legitimate, the money was mine, and most tellingly, notification had been sent to my parents as my legal guardians over a year ago when I was still 19. They kept this from me, I told Professor Wilkins during one of our regular dinners. They knew I had this inheritance coming and still put my stuff in garbage bags. She set down her fork. Have you considered why? Money, I said bitterly. They probably thought they deserved it more than I did. Perhaps, she conceded. But hiding an inheritance is difficult. You would have discovered it eventually. Maybe they were planning to tell me on their terms, to make me grateful, dependent. I pushed my plate away, appetite gone. Or maybe they never planned to tell me at all. The inheritance funds were transferred to my account 3 days before the Watkins Foundation presentation. I hadn't decided what to do with the money, but its presence offered strange security. For the first time since finding my childhood home empty, I felt financially untethered from my past. The Watkins presentation was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in May. I arrived at the Foundation's downtown offices an hour early, reviewing my notes in the sleek waiting area. Our proposal requested $300,000 over 3 years to expand Safe Spaces services beyond the university to the broader community. Eleanor arrived 20 minutes before the scheduled time, impeccable in a charcoal suit. "Ready?" she asked, sitting beside me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, straightening my own carefully selected blazer. Navy blue, professional, but not intimidating. "The board can seem formal," she warned, "but they care about impact. Focus on the human stories. How Safe Space changes lives." We were escorted into a boardroom where 8 people sat around a polished table. I recognized several from my research: local business leaders, philanthropists, a former judge. The Foundation's director, William Watkins himself, rose to greet us. "Ms. Rojas, Ms. Grayson, welcome," he said, gesturing toward the presentation area. "We've been impressed by your written proposal. Show us why Safe Space deserves our support." I connected my laptop to their projector and began. The presentation outlined Safe Space's journey from student project to community resource, highlighting key cases and systemic impacts. Eleanor chimed in with legal context, explaining how our model filled gaps in existing services. 20 minutes in, as I was describing our vision for expansion, the boardroom door opened. A Foundation assistant whispered something to Mr. Watkins, who nodded. "I apologize for the interruption," Mr. Watkins said. "Ms. Rojas, there are some people here claiming to be your family. They're quite insistent on speaking with you." My heart stopped. "My family. They say it's urgent," he added, looking uncomfortable. "We can ask them to wait until we're finished." Eleanor touched my arm supportively. "Your call, Jasmine." I took a steadying breath. After months of unanswered calls, my parents had tracked me down to perhaps the most important professional moment of my young career. The timing couldn't be worse or more telling. "Please tell them I'll speak with them after the presentation," I said, my voice remarkably steady. "This is too important to interrupt." Mr. Watkins nodded approvingly, and the assistant left to deliver my message. I turned back to the presentation, but inside my mind was racing. What could possibly be so urgent after nearly a year of silence? I finished the presentation on autopilot, my voice professional despite the emotional turbulence beneath. The board asked insightful questions which I answered thoroughly, determined not to let my personal drama affect this opportunity. When they finally thanked us and promised a decision within 2 weeks, I felt hollow rather than hopeful. "You were excellent," Eleanor said as we gathered our materials, especially under the circumstances. Outside the boardroom, my parents and Gabriel waited in the reception area. My mother rose when she saw me, her face a complex mixture of emotions: hope, fear, determination. My father remained seated, his expression guarded. Gabriel hovered awkwardly between them, looking everywhere but at me. "Jasmine," my mother began, stepping forward. "We need to talk." Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "I'll give you privacy. Call me later." I nodded gratefully, then turned to my family. "Why are you here? How did you even find me?" "We saw the newspaper article about your housing program," my mother explained. "It mentioned the Watkins presentation today. We've been trying to reach you for months." "I'm aware," I said coolly. 247 calls is hard to miss. My father finally stood. "This has gone on long enough, Jasmine. You're being childish." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Childish? I came home to find my belongings in garbage bags. You sold our house without telling me. You abandoned me. And I'm the childish one." "We made a mistake," my mother said, her voice trembling. "We want to make it right." "Now you want to make it right?" I asked. "After a year? After I've rebuilt my entire life without you? Why now?" Gabriel shifted uncomfortably. "Just hear them out, Jazz. I know about the inheritance," I said flatly. "Is that why you're suddenly interested in reconciliation? Because the money came through?" My father's face darkened. "You've always been so quick to judge. And you've always been so quick to discard," I countered. "You knew about my grandmother's estate last March. You kept it from me, then threw me away." My mother's eyes widened. "You know." "I know everything," I confirmed. "The question is, what do you want now?" The Foundation's reception area wasn't the place for a family reckoning, so we relocated to a nearby coffee shop. I sat across from them, maintaining physical and emotional distance as they attempted to explain the inexplicable. We were ashamed, my mother admitted, cradling her untouched coffee. The foreclosure. Your father lost his job, and I couldn't make enough cleaning houses. We couldn't tell you. So instead of asking for help, you abandoned me. I kept my voice low, controlled. We found out about your grandmother's money right after you left for spring semester, my father explained. The lawyers said you'd inherit when you turned 21. We thought if we moved, started over somewhere new, we could fix our finances before you found out. By selling the house and leaving me with nothing. We panicked, my mother said. Your father thought you would be better off without our problems. You had your scholarship, your university friends. And now, I pressed. Why the sudden change of heart? They exchanged glances. Gabriel spoke up. They made a terrible mistake, Jazz. They know that now. The safe space thing, my father added gruffly. In the newspaper. We saw what you've accomplished and we realized we'd lost something precious. Your successful daughter, I translated bitterly. No, my mother insisted. Our family, our connection. I studied them, these people who had shaped my early life, then shattered it. My mother looked older, gray strands prominent in her dark hair. My father seemed diminished somehow, his shoulders slumped beneath his worn jacket. Gabriel had grown an inch, his boyish features maturing. I've built a new life, I said finally. New connections. People who value me regardless of my accomplishments. We're still your family, my father insisted. I met his gaze steadily. Family doesn't put your belongings in garbage bags. Rising from the table, I placed enough cash to cover all our drinks and prepared to leave. I don't need closure. I've moved forward. But if you truly want to make amends, start by respecting my boundaries. As I walked away, I felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or vindication, but a quiet strength. I had faced my abandoners on my own terms and walked away whole. The next morning, the Watkins Foundation called. Safe Space Initiative had been awarded the full grant amount, with an additional $50,000 for operational expenses. That afternoon, a national news outlet contacted me about featuring Safe Space in a segment on innovative approaches to housing justice. When the story aired 2 weeks later, it reached millions of viewers, including, I later learned, my parents. They never called again. Sometimes the family you build yourself becomes stronger than the one you were born into. And as I looked toward my future, I knew I would never again measure my worth through someone else's eyes.